Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the Distinguished Club Program and how we can be successful in our Distinguished Club. We will also do Moments of Truth, which is a way that helps us be successful in our Distinguished Club Program. But before I really get started, what do you think the Distinguished Club Program is, and why should we care about it? Go ahead and put that in chat, and Betty's going to read out a few of the answers for us.
David, my first response would be it's a roadmap.
It's a great answer. Do we have any more answers there?
I'm waiting.
So what is the Distinguished Club Program, and why should we care about it?
It helps the clubs achieve goals strategically, and it's also a good indicator of club health. It's a way to strengthen the club. And I love the honest answer. I don't know yet.
Well, that's a great answer. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. I kind of set you up for that, but the Distinguished Club Program is about measuring club performance. Peter Drucker says if you can't manage anything if you can't measure it. You can't manage what you don't measure. So the Distinguished Club Program is our way of measuring the success of our clubs. And when we think about what we want out of Toastmasters, what do we want from clubs? Well, we want to be educated. We want to grow our skills and be educated. We want members. We want that social aspect and be able to talk to members and work with other members. We want training from our clubs so that we can constantly improve both our leadership and speaking skills. And we want structure. Now, I know that sounds a little weird. You might say, well, why would we need admin and structure? But it tells us when that we need to do things like pay dues. It tells us when your officer roles are up. Let's say you want to be VPE and you love being VPE for a club. Do you want to sign up forever for that VPE role? Or do you want to actually have a term and be able to plan your goals to that term and be able to meet those goals and then pass on that knowledge and help train other people in succession planning? The DCP allows us to do all of this. And we're going to talk about each section of this, but these are the 4 sections of the DCP. We're going to start with educational goals. The goal 1 is have 4 level 1s. Now, by a show of hands, who's achieved a level 1 this year, either using the hand button and the participants or just raising your hand? Who's achieved a level 1? That's great. Congratulations, and thank you for helping your club. Goal 2 is achieve 2 level 2s. Now, who's achieved a level 2? Again, thank you. Goal 3 is another 2 level 2s. So between goal 1 and goal 1, goal 2 and goal 3, you're going to achieve 4 level 1s and 4 level 2s. Then we have goal 4, achieve 2 level 3s. Who's achieved a level 3 this year? Great. Now, goal 5 and goal 6 are actually the same. They're achieve a level 4, 5, or DTM. The thing with the educational goals is it's 1 goal per type per year. So if you achieve, let's say you have a level 1 in dynamic leadership and you have another level 1 in engaging humor, even though you can submit both those to the club, only one of those goals counts. 1 level 1 per club per year. Now you can take that engaging humor, if you're in multiple clubs, you can take that engaging humor and put that in another club. And the reason for this is so that not one person is achieving all the goals for the club. It takes more than one person to achieve them all. Yes, if you go from a goal 1 through 5, you'll end up achieving goal 5 and 6 for your club, and then you'll help on goal 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is a way that we can bring in new members. This is a way that we can have those members feel like they're a valuable part of the club. If you go to a new member that's been in your club, let's say 2 or 3 months, and you say, hey, we really could need you to help us achieve a level 1 this year. They feel like they're part of the club, and they feel like they're part of the success of that club because they're needed. I watched a presentation by the World Public Speaking Ryan Avery, and he talked about the 3 things that helped him become a world champion. And he said the 3 things that everybody needs in their corner is a coach, a cheerleader, and a champion. And when you are encouraging your members to achieve goals and you have them working towards goals, you become that coach in helping them achieving goals. This is the education section of the DCP. Does anybody have any questions on that? Give you a minute to type in chat.
There is a question about, could you give just a little bit more foundation for what the DCP is supposed to do for the club?
So the DCP is a measuring stick for the club. The Toastmasters International has come out and said, if we do all these activities, you're more than likely going to have a good club. So it's measuring that our members are achieving their educational goals. It's measuring if you're meeting membership goals, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's measuring if your officers are going to training and knowing what they're going to be trained on in the training. And it's whether you've done the admin. So these are mile markers that help you determine how good your club is or how strong your club is going to be. Now, does that mean that a club that doesn't meet DCP goals is going not a good club or is going to fall by the wayside? No, it doesn't. But if you're doing these activities, you're more likely going to be successful as a club. Does that answer the question?
It does, thank you. And then just to further edify on that, David, the different levels are the different projects that are in the pathway guides.
Yes. So like a level 1 is pretty well the same across it is the same across the entire board. So that would be your icebreaker, your research and presenting, and then your evaluation and feedback. Your evaluation and feedback are to give the 2 speeches and give an evaluation. So completing those completes the level 1. Level 2 consists of typically 3 speeches, and depending on what path, those change a little bit. But those are the different levels inside the pathways.
Those are all the questions we have at this time, David. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will move on. So next we have the membership goals. Goal 7 is attain 4 new members, and goal 8 is attain 4 new members. I want to launch a poll. So Christy, if you can go ahead and launch that poll. I want to see what people think of the retention rate of a Toastmasters club. And kind of let me know when we have a good set of answers there.
David, how long we think a club?
The retention rate of a club. So on a year, if you have a member start, and at the next year, how many of those members will you retain? So let's say you had 20 members this year. How many members are you expected to attain next year if you don't grow any membership? And while we're waiting on that poll, so Toastmasters has determined that a club of 20 members is a good, strong club. It's what we call charter strength, and it's where we want to try to get to each year, 20 members or above. And this is partly because if you have 50% of your members come to any one meeting, then you'll have 10 members in attendance, and you'll have 8 roles. And that depends on the club because every club has a few roles. Some have extra roles. But if you fill just the basic roles, you'll have 8 roles filled of those 10 members, which means that 2 members are without a role. And I know if you've been like me, you've been at club meetings where you've done 3 or 4 roles even in a single club meeting. So it really starts to burn you out as you start to do those multiple roles. So if you're in a club with 20 members, the likelihood of that you're having to do a role every meeting, it goes down, and you get a chance to actually get to sit back and watch the club instead of just participating every single time. Do we have the poll results? All right, so we have a tie. Whoop, that went away. I saw that. Okay, there we go. We had a tie between 56% and 31%. The correct answer is 56%. So the retention rate of a Toastmasters club is 56%. So what that means, I'll just use easy numbers. If you had 100 people in your club, 56 members would renew for the next year. Now I'm going to do some quick math. I know I didn't say this is a math class, but don't worry about it. I'm going to do the math for you. If you can, yes, thank you for stop sharing. If you have 20 members in your club, and that's what we say is a good membership, and your retention rate is 56%. So that means you're going to lose 44% of your members every single year. Then that equals 8.8 members, which seems a very familiar number. Notice how the membership goals of growing 8 members is very equal to the retention rate of Toastmasters. This is on purpose, because if I know it's the 8.8, so it's a little over your 8, but if you are able to grow 8 members a year, you're within striking distance of that 20-member club, even if you have all the retention rate, the same retention rate as every Toastmasters club or Toastmasters International. So that's on purpose. Is there any questions on the membership goals? Okay,
There's no questions here, but I'm interested because no one has ever explained it to me in that way before. And I've been a Toastmaster 13 years now. It's the first time I've heard it tied to the dropout rate. And I find that very interesting. Thank you.
And once I did that calculation, it just clicked to me. It was something that I had actually taken the time, and I put the 2 pieces of information together, and it just really clicked to me of why that 8 exists there. So we're going to talk about officer training roles. The goal number 9, 9A and 9B, are to have 4 officers trained at TLI. Well, we do TLI in Arizona, but 4 officers trained at officer training. The first set is June through August, and the second set is November through February. They do not have to be the same 4 officers, but I would always encourage officers to attend training. This is where you learn your role as an officer. This is where you learn those little tricks and tips to help you become a better officer. Even if you've been in Toastmasters for 15 years, you can hear what some of the other clubs are doing. Maybe they've come up with a really innovative idea that you can use in your club. And that's some of the things that you can hear at TLI. Now, we do large TLI sessions in Arizona. We typically do 4 or 5 sessions, and there'll be 100, 150 people at each sessions. But other districts do it completely different. Some other districts actually have really small sessions with only 10 or 15 people, and they'll have 20 or 30 sessions. And they have like the district, they'll have the district division directors, the division directors. They will have them teach these sections. So we do not do that in District 3. We have a TLI committee, and we run them all together. Also, some committees, if you have multiple officer roles. So if you're multiple officers in multiple clubs, some districts will have you go to a different training for each one of those officer roles, or they will not give you credit for every officer role you have. So every district is allowed to do this a little differently, but our next TLI is for every Saturday in January. So if you are an officer, I do hope you attend in January. Are there any questions on officer training?
There was a comment here that it's good for non-officer members to attend as well, because they're probably going to be a future officer. It's never too early to start learning.
And that is definitely a great point, especially right now. We're doing virtual training, so it's free. It doesn't cost anything to attend. When we did the in-person, it was normally $7 per person, but now it's free to attend. So if you ever think that you're going to be an officer, which you should all want to be an officer at some point, because that helps you learn the leadership skills and take advantage of Toastmasters, feel free to attend the TLI and see what it's all about. So we'll talk about administration goals. We have the one-time payment. Yes, they want us to pay our dues, but it's just like anything that you would do at home. You have your bills paid on time. You need to pay your bills on time for Toastmasters. And then we have goal 10B, which is the officer list. Now, this is the one goal that actually takes effect before the Toastmasters year. We'll talk about how the Toastmasters years run in a second, but it starts in July 1st. And you have to have your officer roll in before July 1st. With the exception, if you're a club that has officers elected twice a year. So then you actually have a second chance at this officer list if you have clubs, so you elect officers twice a year, because you have another chance in December because you elect officers in January. So you either have to get your officer list in the end of June or in December. Are there any questions on administration goals?
David, I've never been a member of a club that elected officers every 6 months. What are the pros and cons of having only 6 months in an office?
That's a great question. So the pro is if you have a lot of members, if you're a large club, you can have them be officers more often. And you can kind of go through the officer list. So if you've got a lot of people wanting to be officers and you have a large club, joining every 6 months can get more people into that officer role. And in the legacy program, you only had to serve as an officer for 6 months. But in Pathways, you have to serve as a club officer for a year. So even if you're in a 6-month club, you're going to have to serve 2 officer roles. Now, they don't have to be back to back. You could serve as an officer role for 6 months and then wait a year and serve as another officer role. So that also gives you a break. Some clubs will sometimes split the roles so that if you've got 2 people that want to be BPE, maybe they're both BPE for the entire year, and one of them gets credit for the first 6 months and the other one gets credit for the last 6 months. That way they can kind of help each other and divvy up that role. So that can be an advantage of it. The disadvantage of electing officers every 6 months, especially in smaller clubs, is I know that we've all been in clubs where we go to elect officers and it's like, well, who's going to be our sergeant at arms? And kind of nobody raises their hand and you kind of go, hey, Betty, how about you? And you're kind of nudging Betty. You're going to have to do that twice a year if you've got a club that has low officers.
There is a comment by Trish Blackwelder that in order to have semi-annual officers, the club must meet weekly. If your club meets less than weekly, then you must elect your officers on an annual basis.
That is a great point. And I will add on top of that, you also have to choose that in your club, I'm blanking on the term, your club charter. So that if you change that, if you're a club that now currently only does officers every year, you have to go to your club charter and change it every 6 months. You can't just decide that on your own. You have to actually go into your club charter.
And there's no other comments at this time. Thank you, David.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about the qualifications. And I call this qualifications because we've now gone over the 10 goals, and there's only 10 goals in the DCP. But there's this qualification that if you do not make membership, then you can't even have the DCP. So if you were to get 5 goals and you don't make your membership goal, which is kind of the 11th goal, which is not really an 11th goal, but it's the unlock, it's the key. You can't qualify for the DCP if you do not have the membership. So the membership is you need to have 20 members or a net gain of 5. So what this means is, let's say your club started with 60 members for the year. At the end of the year, all you have to do is have 20. So you could actually lose 40 members and still get DCP credit. But the net gain of 5, let's say your club started at 13 members. You only have to get to 18 members to get your distinguished club credit. Clubs that start at about 16 or above will just have to end up at 20. So there may be a mix. If you started with 19, you have to gain 1 by the end of the year. It's all based on that charter membership of 20 members, and that's where they're trying to get the clubs. Now, if your club's larger than that, that's great, but they want you to have at least 20 members in your clubs. Is there any questions on that? I know there's a lot of questions that happens on the net gain of 5 that confuses a lot of people.
David, for just further clarification, you're talking about the base membership as of July 1st of each year?
That is correct. So that's a great question, Betty. So the Toastmaster year starts July 1st, and you end up with a base membership of July 1st. So let's say you didn't get distinguished this year. Your club normally had 20 members every single year, and this year you end the year at 13 members. Your base for the next year starts at that 13 members, and that's where you would gain 5 from. And you have until June 30th to gain those 5 members. That also means, let's say you add 5 members, but you lose members. it has to be a net gain. So even though you may add 5 members to your club, but you lose 1, you still have to have that 5. So you have to end up at 18 members if you started at 13. Any questions on that?
No other questions. Thank you.
As we talked about before, the year starts July 1st and ends June 30th. Everything resets July 1st, so that's when your base would reset. Even if after, let's say, October renewals, let's say you drop down to 13 members, it's still based on your July 1st membership. So you have to look at that base as July 1st, like Betty was talking about. If a club achieves 5 of those 10 goals that we mentioned before, they will be distinguished. They'll get a distinguished ribbon in the mail, and they will be considered distinguished. If they reach 7, they become select distinguished. If they reach 9 or more, so if this is, you can get 10, you can get all 10. So you reach 9 or more, you will be president's distinguished. While I was on the Distinguished Club program, I thought it would be great to talk about coaches. So coaches are experienced Toastmasters from other clubs that can help bring in ideas, suggestions, and support. They are there to help make sure your club achieves its goal, and they're not there to make your club like their club. We've talked about meetings where you have to fill multiple roles at a meeting, and these coaches can be an extra member to help fill those roles and give advice. But a coach is only available if you have 12 or less members in your club. So if you've got 12 or less members, you can reach out to the club growth director and ask about having a coach. And if you're in a great club or you're working on your DTM, reach out to the club growth director and tell them you want to be a club coach, because it is a requirement to get your DTM, but it's also helping other clubs. And a lot of times it is just sitting there and giving them fresh ideas and giving them a little bit of relief on having to do everything for their club. So we're going to have a little quiz here. I'm going to teach you how to do annotation tools. So if you go up to the top of the screen where you see the green bar, and it will kind of scroll down, you'll see this button called annotation. It's a little pencil. So you'll click on that little pencil and you can choose, like, say, stamp. We're going to choose stamp, and you can see the different stamps, stars, crosses, X's, and stuff like that. Choose one of those and then just mark on your screen the answer to the question. So how many awards of each type can a single member contribute to the club, to our Toastmasters club each Toastmasters year? I see a mark from Shelley. I see one from Christy, DJ, there's Jean. So most of you have chosen one. One is correct. So you can only give one type of role per level. It's a level, one type of goal to each club each year. So if you have 2 level 1s, you can give them both to this club, but they're only going to get credit for the first one. If you have multiple clubs, you can give 1 to each club. Can we clear the screen there? All right, so we're going to go on to our next question. How many goals does a club need to achieve to earn President's Distinguished? Well, Shelley was on there before I even answered it. All right, I see most people on the 9. That is correct. In order to be President's Distinguished, your club must earn 9 goals. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Distinguished District Program. Before I move on, are there any questions on the Distinguished Club Program? So the Distinguished District Program, just like a club, your areas and divisions and districts have goals, just like the club does. Now, I know most of we have a few area directors on, we have a few division directors on. I'm going to go through this fairly fast, but I want you to know that the areas and divisions and districts also have goals that they need to meet in order to achieve these levels. For the area, in order to be a distinguished area, you need to have half your clubs be distinguished. So most of your areas are 4 to 6 clubs. Let's say you had an area with 6 clubs. You need to have half, so 3 of your clubs be distinguished in order to become a distinguished area. Select distinguished areas, it's half plus 1. So again, if you have that 6, you need to have 4 because half is 3. You add 1 club, that's 4. So that's how you would be a select distinguished area. For presidents distinguished, you take that half plus 1, and then you have to add a club. So again, we'll go with our 6 area. You're going to take half, so that's 3 plus the 1, the 4, and then you got to add a club to your area. So you're going to end up with 7 clubs, and 4 of which are distinguished. There's a qualification, just like in the club program, there's qualifications for the area goals. And one of the qualifications is you have to have 75% of your area club visits. Now, I've had a few area directors say, well, I only need to get 75% of my area club visits, so that's all I have to worry about. You still want to try to get all your club visits, because why would you not want to get all your club visits? And I will actually share, we had an instance last year where one of the area directors, they announced a new award. It was the Visiting Victor Award. And one of the area directors hadn't submitted all their area director reports. And so they didn't get that Visiting Victor Award. And they were kind of upset because they hadn't submitted an area report for a club that wasn't meeting. So I understand why they didn't submit the report. But they wanted to, in order to do that, you need to submit all your area reports, including the ones that aren't meeting. The other qualification is there's no club loss. So when I'm saying add a club, it's just like in your membership, right? If you start with 6 clubs, you have to end with 6 clubs or 7 clubs in order to be able to participate in the distinguished area program. For divisions, it's a little bit easier. It's 40% of your club to be distinguished division. And this could mean that you are a distinguished division and your areas are not distinguished areas. More than likely, your areas would be distinguished if you're a distinguished division, but it doesn't have to be. You could actually have clubs that would get you to distinguish without the areas being distinguished. Select distinguished division is 45% of your clubs. And president's distinguished is 50% of your clubs and add a club to the division. Again, with no club loss. Now that one's a little harder in the division because you're looking at the entire division for that club loss, but no club loss in the division. What if you would lose a club? You need to gain 2 clubs. So in order to get president, you need to replace that club. So it's no net club loss. It's not like, hey, I lost this 1 club and now I don't have a chance. If you replace that club, it counts as not a club loss. It's a net loss, a net loss of clubs. For the district has 3 measures that they're looking at. We have membership, we have distinguished clubs, and we have club base. So we're looking to increase our membership numbers, we're looking to increase our distinguished club numbers, and we're looking to increase the base number of clubs. So this is based on July 1st, we come in with a number of clubs and we want to increase those clubs. To be a distinguished district, we have to have a 1.5 growth on both membership and club base, and we have to have 40% of distinguished clubs. To be select distinguished, it's a 3% growth on club base and membership, and 45% distinguished clubs. To be president's distinguished, it's 5% growth on club base and membership, and 50% distinguished clubs. And then the district has a real special one, Smedley distinguished. This is one that was just announced a couple of years ago, and it is 8% membership, 8% growth in club base, and 55% distinguished clubs. That is the overview of the Distinguished District Program. Any questions on distinguished areas, distinguished divisions, or the distinguished districts?
David, I have less of a question and just a comment. Having been a Toastmaster for 13 years, I've had seasons where I've had very good supportive area directors. And I've had seasons when the area directors are less engaged. And it is always better for the club when you have a highly engaged area director. The fact that we don't have 200 club presidents on this call right now tells me that area directors are not engaged, because every single club president can benefit from this conversation tonight. And their area directors should be following up with them and saying, hey guys, you've got this great opportunity, you should be there. And it's really important for those of you that are area directors to understand that you are the voice of the district. And the clubs really do appreciate it when you stay engaged with them. Thank you for letting me get on my soapbox.
Thank you, Betty. All right, so we will move on. We're going to talk about Moments of Truth. So Moments of Truth is a program that you can actually download from Toastmasters International, and you can apply it to your club. You can do it as part of your club. You can do it as a district. You can do it as an area, division. And it's about looking at those items that we just talked about. It's looking at the goals that make a club a good club. And normally it takes about an hour because you really want to take the time to talk with your club about it. But I suggest that you do Moments of Truth at least once a year in every club, even multiple times a year. It makes sure that you're on track to be a great club and a distinguished club. A Moment of Truth is an episode where a person comes in contact with any aspect of a Toastmasters experience and forms an impression of a club's quality and service. That's what a Moment of Truth is. There are 6 focuses on Moments of Truth. 1, first impressions. 2, membership orientation. 3, fellowship, variety, and community. 4, programming, planning, and meeting organization. 5, membership strength. And 6, achievement recognition. And we'll talk about each one of these and what they mean. First impressions. So I've had the opportunity to go to many clubs and visit many clubs throughout the district. And I was actually in an open house before one club meeting. And they were sitting there talking, and I walked in and I could see them sitting there, all the members sitting there talking by themselves. And there were some guests that were actually over on the other side of the room, sitting there alone, not talking, and they were staying quiet. And as I walked in the room, I could hear the members talking about why they didn't like Pathways, why it was such a horrible program, and they didn't want to be part of the program. While they had guests in the room who, if they were to join, would only be working on Pathways. The Toastmaster arrived late. They arrived after the meeting started, and they struggled to fill the final roles because the officers in the room didn't jump in to help fill the roles before the meeting started. And I compare this to another club and another open house I attended, where the second I walked in, I was greeted. They had a guest book there. All members were talking to guests and sitting beside them, talking about what brought them there and kind of giving them an overview of what to expect in the meeting. Now, which club do you think had members joining at the end of the night? I'm sure that you all picked the second club, that they were the ones that had the members join. And that's definitely true. It's said that you have between 7 and 27 seconds, depending on which study you look at, to make a first impression. And what first impression does your club give off? Not every club is the same, and we may have many different cultures, but some items to think about when you're looking at first impressions. Are guests warmly greeted and introduced to officers and members of the club? Are guest books and name tags provided? I'm actually in one club, University of Facilities Management, and we have name tents that are laminated, so that when a guest comes in, they can take and they can write on their name tent, which is we can erase later. But they're also color coded, so that one side is green and one side's red. And we explain to them if they want to participate in table topics, they just put the green side forward towards the Toastmaster. And if they don't want to participate in table topics, they can put the red side. This way they can just sit and feel comfortable. So name tints can help with the club. Professionally, whether the room is professionally arranged or if it's just kind of thrown together. Maybe if the meeting's in a convenient location. Are guests invited to join the club? How many times have we had a guest come to the meeting and they walk in and everybody talks to them and then they walk out at the end of the club and everybody goes, hey, did you get their information? No, I didn't get their information. Did you ask them to join? I've talked to members that it was 3 or 4 meetings before they were asked to join the club. They're there because they want to learn about Toastmasters. They want to grow their speaking and leadership abilities. Ask them to join. Just ask for the cell. Membership orientation. This is the second aspect. When I was 16, I was hired into a job with no training, no onboarding was provided at all. My news boss, Kevin, told me to go learn my role by observing another employee. The employee that I was hired to replace because he had just given his 2-week notice and only had 1 week left. I also had no experience with the drill press. I was 16. I just started working. And this was a major part of the work. I learned the best I could and started to excel at the job. Most of the job was analytics using Excel, which I was very familiar with. Within a month, I had created new data tools and shortcuts, which allowed me for quick analysis of data, and I quickly learned how to use the drill press, or so I thought, and I was pleased with my work. One day I came in and Kevin asked to speak to me, and he pulled me into his office. He explained that he was firing me. Why? Because I had made mistakes using the drill press and ruined some of the manufacturing projects. This came as a complete shock to me. Here I was, one of my first jobs. I had to teach myself everything because I had no training, and I was fired because I was not taught properly. Whose fault was this really? Most people would point the finger at my boss because he didn't provide me proper training for the job, and I would agree with him. I spent months of frustration trying to learn the job on my own, only to find out I was doing it incorrectly. I believe in many of our Toastmasters clubs, we are Kevins when it comes to orientating new members and onboarding them. Not because we don't care about the new members, it's because we are volunteers in a volunteer organization and we all have busy lives. We all think somebody else will do the work. And I admit, I've been a Kevin in my club when somebody has enrolled a new member. I've said to myself, I'm the secretary of this club. The VPE will handle the new member. Only to find out that the new member leaves the club in 2 months, not because no one helped them, it is our responsibility that all new members get properly onboarded and set for their Toastmasters journey. As a district, our new member pathways adoption rate is 64%. This means that 46% of new members in our districts who have been Toastmasters less than 6 months have never signed up for a path. These members may be giving speeches, however, they do not have access to the training and the tools that Toastmasters provides. In the past, we might have just handed the members a manual and told them, read it. We can no longer do this with pathways. We need to take the extra step of showing them how to log in and how to navigate Bankscamp. In this aspect, I've actually created a checklist, which can be found on the D3 blog page on the District 3 website. And it gives you how to onboard new members. Some of the things to think about when orientating new members are formal inductions, including pin ceremonies and name tags. If you give pins or if you give the name tag, that's a great place to give them out. Assignment of the mentors, if you have a mentoring program, which you should have a mentoring program in your clubs. Educational programs and recognition system discussed. Learning needs access, understanding what the member needs and what they want from your club. Discuss accommodations for members with disabilities. Let them know how to sign up for roles in your club. Every club does it differently. They need to know how to sign up for those roles. And involve members in club activities. I forgot to ask if there was any questions on the first impressions, but are there any questions on first impressions or membership orientation?
Kelly, would you clarify your question? I don't understand it.
David, do you have a link to that checklist you were talking about, or where is it so I can find it? Because I
It
do
is,
onboarding into my club, so I want to make sure I'm giving them everything.
I'll throw it into the chat.
it is on the District 3 blog page. Christy can probably look that up pretty quickly and throw that in
Thanks,
chat for you.
Amanda.
Actually,
Amanda
Amanda
put it in.
already posted it in the chat.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Are there any other questions or comments for those two? Okay, we will continue to move on. Fellowship, variety, and communication. On one of my past area director reports, this is before I was a member of the trio, the area director actually wrote that we didn't interact much before the meeting, and it didn't seem like we liked each other. The members of the club actually got together and we had a really good laugh at this because we really did care for each other and we really were a close-knit club. We had a lot of fun at this area's director's comment, but then we really realized that they had come to our meeting and we had a busy day where we were trying to work on getting the meeting started and we weren't talking to each other. And they were an area director, but what if that had been a guest that visited our clubs? We must always be aware of how we treat guests and members in our clubs. And some things to look for in this is, are guests greeted warmly? Is it enjoyable and educational meetings, or are they just going through the motions? This is where a lot of themes can come in on those educational, the enjoyable meetings, and table topics can really help with that. Make sure that we plan those meetings and have fun meetings. Do we have any regularly scheduled social events for the club? Not just the meetings, but maybe some social events outside the clubs. Do the members participate in area districts or international events? I've been to many clubs and I've seen clubs that are saying, yeah, we never go outside the club. In fact, that was one of my corporate clubs for the longest time. Only one person ever went outside the club. And it's because they really only cared about Toastmasters as long as the corporation was paying for it and they could go to a meeting. That's changed, but that's something to look for when you are doing moments of truth for your clubs. Do we have inter-club events? Especially now with Zoom, invite another club to your meeting. Go to their meetings. Maybe switch speakers. For the longest time in District 3, we had the traveling gavel. And what that was is it was a gavel that went from club to club, and you could actually take your club and still the gavel. And what it allowed you to do is to have 3 members from your club, 3 or 4 members go, and they would fill roles in the other members' club. And it was just to promote inter-club activity. And we could definitely have that inter-club activity even now. Find a club that meets at the similar time that you do, and have them come in. Your members will love having extra speakers that they haven't heard speak before, and they will get a better understanding of Toastmasters and the overall district. Does your club have a newsletter or website, and is it updated? I've gone to some clubs' website, and they have the president from 2 years ago on their website. They haven't posted on their Facebook page for 1.5 years. That's not very enticing to guests. If they're looking up your Facebook page and they can't get a hold of your president or they can't get a hold of your officers, and then the last person to post and the last thing to happen on your Facebook page was 2 years ago, they're really thinking that there's nothing going on in this club. So make sure that you stay on top of that stuff. Any questions on fellowship, variety, or communication?
Just a comment about being sad that we can't be more face-to-face because of the pandemic.
And I definitely understand that, but I think this time more than ever, you can actually visit more clubs and throughout the world. I mean, there's been many members that have visited clubs in every single district in the world. You could visit clubs in England. You can visit clubs any place in the world. So it's a great time, even though we can't meet that face-to-face. It's a good time to take advantage of the fact that you can go places that you would never be able to go before. And I would suggest that you take advantage of that. You can have inter-club activities with clubs in different districts. You can have inter-club activities with clubs all over the world. And this would be a great time that you could set something up like that. In fact, I attended where I had Ryan Avery and I heard him speak, that was a Competitive Speakers. And Competitive Speakers is a club in Phoenix, and they have other clubs throughout the world. Ryan Avery started several of these clubs, and they had an inter-club event that had clubs from Taiwan, clubs from Philadelphia, and clubs from Phoenix as all part of the event. And it was really interesting to see that happen. And that's something you could do in your clubs.
I will say, David, we've had people in Sleek from several other districts, and it's wonderful to get that other district perspective. So I agree with you that we should all try to take advantage of this wonderful time.
Program planning.
I agree too, because I've visited a different district and I've learned how they do different things, and I can tell you it's nice because then you can bring ideas back.
Thank you, Shelley. Program planning and meeting organizations. I'm sure we've all been at a meeting where a person pulls the table topic question sheet from their binder and asks members questions off the sheet, or it feels like they're learning how to do their roles for the first time during the meeting. It's always more fun when members take the time to prepare their roles, and it's part of the Toastmasters promise. It's something that we promise when we become a Toastmasters. Program and agenda publish. Make sure you put your agendas out in advance. Yes, we all know things change the day of. We've all had that happen. But remember that even changing roles, even on the changing roles, to be there early so that you know what roles are open and who's not going to be there. And please make sure that you tell your Toastmaster if you're not going to be there, so they're not waiting for the last minute to walk in to fill that role. They know that that needs to be filled before the role starts. When that Toastmaster starts the meeting, you shouldn't be filling the roles. And I've seen that happen at meetings where it's like, okay, we're going to start the meeting. Now we still have this and this and this. If a guest comes into that meeting, they're going to think that you're not organized. Try to get those roles filled before the meeting, which means that you should be there before the meeting. Other items to look for on this are members prepared to carry out all the program assignments or all projects from Pathways. You want to make sure that the speeches in your club are Pathways projects so that you're working the educational program. Do meetings begin and end in time? This is exactly what the general evaluator talks about. Are table topics creative, and those are activities that keep the meeting interesting? Are there positive and helpful evaluations? I know of Toastmasters, and I've heard of Toastmasters that have been, well, you know, I just didn't like your face, or your voice sounds weird. You know, if you could fix that, you'd be a better speaker. Those are not helpful evaluations. They're not something that the speaker can take back and improve on. They're just mean evaluations. And on the flip side of that, I've heard evaluations that are like, you did everything great, and there's nothing I can suggest. The key to Toastmasters and the key to making Toastmasters the program is a good evaluation. So being able to evaluate and give feedback that they can actually use, that constructive feedback. So this is definitely something to look for in the program planning and meeting organization. Any questions or comments on that one?
There is a comment here that there are clubs that the speakers refuse to participate in Pathways. What should the officers do to address the resistance? So,
without, you know, really kicking them out of the club, which I'm not saying kicking them out of the club, I definitely wouldn't suggest that. But that is the educational program, and you can talk to them about supporting the Distinguished Club program. And if they're a value member of the club, they're going to help you get those goals, and that's the only way you can get those goals. You can talk to them about, hey, the speech that you just gave would actually fit into this Pathways project. You can get printed manuals. So if their problem is going on to the website, you can get them printed manuals, and they can record those speeches in the Pathways manuals. The other thing that I would definitely suggest is if you have members that are not giving manual speeches, you bump them for manual Pathway speeches. So that if you've got, and I said manual speeches, I mean Pathway speeches, manual speeches is what we used to call them. But if you've got somebody who is not working the program and you have somebody else who wants to give a speech that day, you give preference to the person that is working pathways. If you do not have your speaking spots filled, then you can have them speak. But I still highly suggest that you even sit down with them and say, this speech would have fit really well in here. I would have liked you to give you credit for this. All you had to do was give your evaluation for this pathway project. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Membership strength. So this picture is of me working out. Christy took this picture when I was working out the other day. So.
And you shaved your head just for tonight?
Yes, I shaved my head just for tonight. Many Toastmasters will tell you that when you hit 20 members, your club runs much more smoothly. And when you're down to those 8 members and 8 members are doing everything, they quickly get burned out and let items slip. Many don't follow up with the new members as often, or they don't take the time to post about the club on social media. I know I've been guilty of this. So busy doing everything to keep the club together that I've spent no time to help grow the club. So getting more members and being able to keep a strong membership strength really helps the club and helps the officers breathe. And we talked about it before, even doing multiple roles in a meeting. This gives you a chance for your members to breathe too. So when you're looking at membership strength of the club, does the club have 20 or more members? Are members retained? This is not saying that members never leave your club, because life does happen. But if your club is turning over members every 2 months and it's turning over 50% of your membership base every 2 months, there's something wrong in your club, and you really need to take the time to look at what that is. Does your club promote its organization in the community? Are the club programs varied and exciting? We've talked about that on multiple of these. Are Toastmasters sponsoring new members? Are they recognized when they sponsor new members? Recognition is a big part of Toastmasters. And do you have regular membership building programs? Open houses? And I know many people go, well, how do you have an open house in a digital world? And they're struggling with that because we've changed what's going on right now due to COVID. But Karen Hewitt's put together a lot of great trainings. They're on the YouTube page, and one of them is how to have an effective open house. So I suggest, if you haven't watched that and you didn't go to that training, you go check that training out, because it will help you on how to have an effective open house. So any questions on membership strength? Achievement recognition. I earned my master's degree, and this was a major achievement in my life. It took me 2 long years and a lot of hours of reading and writing papers. I was excited to finish, and so was my wife, because it meant she didn't have to edit my papers anymore. I was excited to tell my work. After all, I work for a university, and my bosses always talk and encourage education, talk about and encourage education. I reported the master's degree to my boss, Mark, and he passed it on to his boss, Chris. I expected to hear something from Chris. Chris often mentions achievements of employees in weekly staff meetings, but meetings came and went. I asked Mark, did you actually tell Chris? And he sent me a copy of the email that he sent to him. Months went by, and I had resigned myself that he would never acknowledge my achievement. However, he acknowledged other employees' achievements. How do you think this made me feel? How do you think your members feel when they put in achievements and it takes 2 weeks before the Vice President of Education or someone else approves it? How do you think it feels when you ask them to wait for credit because you want to play the game for the DCP and you want them to hold their award for next year? I imagine they feel much like I did. If they're excited, they want to be recognized of those achievements. Items TI says to look for in achievement recognition. Award applications immediately are submitted to World Headquarters, so that when you get that member completing a level, you submit that in Basecamp and you submit that in Club Central as soon as you can. progress charts displayed and maintained at meetings. I haven't seen these in clubs in a long time, but we used to have the big wall charts, and they make them for pathways, but you can put the membership name and their progress. This really helps kind of do competition, and competition can really help grow membership. Oh, you know, Steve, he got a level 1 last week, and I'm only 2 speeches away. I got to catch up to him. Those charts can really help on that. Our membership are recognized with ceremonies. So you actually call them up, present their plaque. I say plaque, it's certificate. They still get a certificate. Now, it's not mailed to them like in the old legacy program, but you can go in Pathways and print it out. And you actually have more control over that if you're a VPE or if you're a base camp manager, so president, secretary, or VPE. You can go into the membership profile and you can actually print out their achievement and their certification. What I've done on my club is, since we're virtual, I will print it out, I'll throw it on a PowerPoint, and then when I get into the meeting, I'll bring up the PowerPoint and say, hey, congratulations, Devesh. Devesh is one that just achieved it in our club last week. Devesh has just achieved a level 4, and I'll show it on the screen, and that way we can achieve them. So you can still definitely do that with a virtual world and with Pathways. Our club, district, and international leaders recognize. So if your member becomes an area director, division director, is it recognized in the club? Our club and members' achievements publicized. If you have a Facebook page, if you have your club website, put the pictures of the winners up. Put the pictures of people that have achieved things. We used to have a spark plug in one of our clubs, and we take the picture of the member with the spark plug. When we met, we actually had a little spark plug that we'd hand out to them. We would take the picture and we would put it on our page. Now we can just take the picture of the Zoom meeting, but we actually keep that on our page so that people, if they go there, they can see the archive of who won that award. And is the DCP used for planning and recognition? So that's where your DCP can come back in here, your Distinguished Club Program. Use that for planning. That's your strategic plan for the year, and then recognize people when they achieve those goals. Any questions on achievement recognition?
Comment in here that there are some clubs that just have a practice of holding awards in June instead of even asking. So you make a good point that people want that instant recognition when possible.
Especially a new member. I mean, let's say they've been working on level 1 or level 2 for, the entire year, and you want to hold that until, oh, let's hold that for 3 months. But I've been working on it. I'm excited to achieve that. Why would you hold that from the member? Give examples of of a poor case of each one of these, and give examples of a club that that have done these really well. And if you want to, I'll go ahead and stop the recording so that we can, well, let's go ahead and share. I won't stop the recording. Let's go ahead and share and give us examples of where you found the clubs that are doing this well and clubs that are doing this poorly. Don't share the club names if they're doing it poorly, please.
I'm a member of a club that does first impressions really, really well. They have always reached out to people who are visiting and made them feel really welcome.
What do they do? Do they just follow up?
There's a little of both. There's one person that's designated, the VP of membership, that's designated to reach out to every visitor, get their email address. Now that we're on Zoom, get their email address, ask them if they have any questions on a one-on-one conversation in chat, see if there's anything specific they want to do. If they want to participate, they ask them that question, and then they let the table topics master know if they want to participate or not. Those types of things, they kind of become their buddy and let them know that if they have questions, they can text them directly in chat to get the answers, and then they don't have to feel like silly people putting it against everybody.
One of the clubs I'm in, we actually do it's from Pin to Podium, so I'll share my home club. And what we'll actually do when we get a guest, we have a little card that we have put together, and it looks like a book, and we actually put that in, and we mail them a thank you letter, and we seal that with a wax seal. So it kind of goes with the theme of the club.
David, I did a shout out in the chat for 3 different clubs. First of all, new member orientation, hands down, goes to Melrose. They have the most sophisticated program for member orientation and mentorship follow-up that I have ever seen or heard about of any club. Clearly, Dobson Ranch is doing something amazing because their membership is always, I think, the highest in the district. They're always really, really good at building and retaining members. And my own personal club, Sleek, does an excellent job of achievement recognition and building first impressions.
Anybody else want to share what their clubs do?
Another club that I'm aware of that does a great orientation is, my mind just went blank, Maverick Toastmasters. They do a great orientation, and they've been doing it since day one of their club, ever since they were chartered.
On the District 3 website, so if you go to the resources, there is actually manuals. So there's a new guest packets and membership packets. And so we ran a campaign last year to get the best guest and membership packets. And those are on there so that you can actually use some of that information so you're not recreating the wheel if your club doesn't already have those. Does anybody else want to share what their club does or what you've seen done poorly?
This is Christy here. This is not one of my clubs, but it was a club that I had visited a few times to be a judge or a functionary for a club contest. And I attended one of their meetings just as a regular meeting. And I was really impressed with the number of ways that they handled things. They were very friendly and everybody greeted me, including the officers. And they had at the entrance on their welcome table, they had a little magnet board, and they had, every member had a badge, and they kept the badges on this magnet board, and when you came in you could get your badge and put it on. So as a guest, I knew I could see everybody's name, and I thought that was really great. If clubs use the little folding name placards on tables, that's another really awesome. I've seen another club do that. That's a really great way of keeping guests sort of, feeling more welcome if they can see people's names. I was really impressed with their setup. It looked like they really had their stuff together.
Great. That's one thing you can also do is your new member your new member recognition. So when you induct a new member into your club, if you have the name tags or if you have the name tents, that's a great time to give them as part of the new member the orientation. So that when you're inducting them into the club, that's one thing that UAFM does. We actually hand them their name badge or their name tent as part of that the induction.
It's Shelley. I'm actually helping a club because they don't have any seasoned Toastmasters in there. And I've noticed that the onboarding that I'm doing with the new members is helping because they're getting engaged in pathways. We're getting them to do the assessment and we're getting them on board, and they're doing their speeches and they're wanting to do roles, and they're just wanting to be part of the club and they want to go forward. So it's been nice to see that I took it from my home club and applied it to this club, and it seems to be working, which is
great.
Good, because that's how you keep them engaged and how you keep them as a member.
It's definitely great. Any questions at all, or any other things that people would like to share?
Do you know, I guess my question is, since we're in the virtual world, building clubs is not easy, but I know Toastmasters International just sent out something about charter fees and things like that. Is somebody going to be sending that out to everybody to know, or no?
We will be sending it out.
Okay.
I can give you an overview, but basically they are waiving the charter fee for a new club. They are waiving the new member fee for a new club. So if a new club, has the 20 members, that's $20 times 20 members that they no longer have to pay, or the charter fee.
Okay. Okay. That works. Do you think that's going to be easier to do or harder to do to get people to start new clubs that way?
Oh, it's less money, so therefore it's going to be easier.
Okay. Okay. I was just asking. Okay.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, I'm going to go ahead and post the evaluation in the chat because I do see that we're losing some people. So I'm going to go ahead and post the evaluation in the chat. Anybody who wants to stick around and continue to talk, I'm here to talk. Otherwise, I'm letting you go 45 minutes early.